Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most notorious serial killers of all time. His brutal and disgusting crimes have echoed around the world for over 25 years, as people have tried to understand his warped fantasies and how someone could inflict them on another human being. Join us for part 2 of our show, Jeffrey Dahmer. Hey guys, I'm Sai, and we are Ace Podcast Nation. Welcome to our new series, The Serial Killer Files. This is the second part of our first episode of this series. In this brand new series, we will be selecting a different serial killer each episode and discuss the evidence, the crimes committed, and everything we can find on these heinous crimes. Needless to say, due to the nature of this content we will be discussing during these shows, they are not going to be suitable for people under the age of 18 or of a sensitive or nervous nature. We will always try to discuss these crimes with tact and respect for the victims, as it's important for us to note that this series is a true crime series, meaning it's affected real people, real families, and real communities. You can find all our podcasts and series on our YouTube channel in video format, as well as audio format on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, ACEcast, Pocket Casts, and podcast.co. Good start. During these shows, you can find interviews, podcasts, and content on a variety of subjects. We have series on mental health, football, films, TV, music, wrestling, conspiracy theories, serial killers, and much, much more. This episode, as I said, is part 2 of episode 1, The Serial Killer Files, and it is one of the most bizarre and brutal that we will probably cover in all of our episodes. To join me as we take a trip into the depraved, scary, and brutal world of serial killers, I'm very pleased to welcome my co-host Rhys from the Conspiracy Theory shows. What's happening, mate?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, all good.
It's all good. So,
all prepared, ready.
Yeah, it's as we mentioned last time, it's brutal going through some of these stuff, but it's interesting to talk about. And let's get into it. The last sort of things we were talking about was his sixth victim, Raymond Smith, which was found under his grandma's home, which he had moved back into. So like approximately 1 week after the murder of Raymond Smith, on or about the May the 27th, he had lured another young man to his apartment. But on that occasion, however, Dahmer himself accidentally drank the drink that he had laced with sedatives. And when he awoke the following day, the guy who he had kidnapped he hadn't even kidnapped him, who had invited to his house, had robbed him of several items: clothing, money, watch. But obviously, Jeffrey Dahmer never reported this incident to the police, although he did divulge it to his probation officer. So a little bit of karma there for him, but certainly not enough. So in June 1990, so not too long after, Dahmer lured a 27-year-old acquaintance named Edward Smith to his apartment. He drugged and strangled Smith. On this occasion, rather than immediately acidifying the skeleton or repeating the process of bleaching, which had rendered his previous victim's skulls very brittle, he placed Smith's skeleton into a freezer for several months in the hopes that it would retain moisture. Freezing the skeleton did not remove the moisture, and the skeleton of his victim would be acidified several months later. Dahmer accidentally destroyed the skull, but he placed it in the oven to dry. a process that caused the skull to explode. Dahmer himself was later to inform police that he had felt rotten about Smith's murder, as he had been unable to retain any of the parts of his body afterwards. Yeah, so obviously this victim was slightly different because it was somebody that he knew, beforehand. It wasn't someone he'd met and then sort of charmed or whatever, convinced to come to his room for whatever reason, or to his house. It was someone, and in the interviews with the police, he expressed regret, not for the crime, but because he hadn't been able to retrieve or keep any of the parts of his body, which I'm assuming he wanted to even more than perhaps some of the others because he knew him.
What makes these people tick?
Yeah, it's bizarre, mate, isn't it? Obviously, a lot of his victims were, they were strangers, weren't they? But in this case, he wasn't. It was someone he was in a work acquaintance, I said, or just an
Yeah,
acquaintance.
again, he's pushing his limits more and more, and
yeah, he seems to be at this stage in 1990. He seems like he can't control it at all. Like there's not a very big waiting period between each victim. So like Edward Smith was June 1990. The one who he had nearly killed and had got away, I think that was what was that? Just looking now. I think that was June-ish.
yeah, the last two
No, it's
years
May. Sorry, it was May 1990. So yeah, he was on a roll, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the last 2 years of his spree were pretty much, was this how many of his killings? What,
Yeah,
13, 14 of his killings were like the last 2 years.
Yeah, so I'm just looking now. So June, so he went May, where he tried to kill the guy who robbed him. June, he killed Smith. And then less than 3 months later, after the murder of Smith, he encountered a 22-year-old guy, Ernest Miller from Chicago. And basically, Miller agreed to accompany Dahmer to his apartment for $50. Basically a lot. Further agreed to allow him to listen to his heart and stomach. So like, it sounds like this guy was short of cash and he offered him $50 just to come back to his house, let him listen to his heart and his stomach.
Have you noticed though, almost every single one of them was he offered them $50?
Yeah, and I know like $50 in 1990 was, it's more than what it is
Quite a
now.
substantial amount.
Yeah, not like, loads, life-changing, but it's, if you're skint and someone says, I'll give you 50 quid if you let me listen to your heart and stomach, and you're that desperate for money, you're going to do it, aren't you? When Dahmer attempted to perform oral sex upon Miller, he was informed that will cost you extra. So it doesn't say in the info I've got here whether the guy was like a homeless man or whether he was like a rent boy or something. But that sort of
All I know about him was he was a dance student, so I'm guessing, he was hard up on cash, etc.
Yeah.
And obviously, if he was willing for someone to perform an oral sex act on him, he must have been either homosexual or bisexual.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, the fact that it, like, obviously you don't know what the interaction was, whether he'd be convinced or whether he did just come out as blatantly as that and say, no, that'll cost extra, which would, if that was the case, you may think that he'd maybe done, taken part in sort of sexual liaisons for money before. But if it was like, oh, no, I'm not into that, or I know you're not doing that, I didn't come there for this. And then he sort of talked him into it and he said, I'll do it, let you do it for money, extra money. You obviously don't know the full, the full sort of level of the conversation, I suppose. So he said it'll cost extra. Dahmer gave his intended victim 2 sleeping pills. On this occasion, he had only. On this occasion, he only had 2 sleeping pills to give to his victim, which meant he killed Miller by slashing his carotid artery with the same knife that he'd uses to dissect the bodies. Basically, he wasn't able to incapacitate him because he didn't have enough sedatives to completely immobilize him. So that sort of shows his need to kill, because even though he didn't have the required drugs to completely immobilize his victim, he still the urge and the need was too great for him.
Yeah,
So
this
he
is the
altered
one thing in
his
the
killing.
show. Like his killings, he wasn't just ritualistic. He was just a savage killer. He had to kill.
Oh yeah,
That was his thing.
absolutely. And then after he killed him, he posed the bodies for various suggestive Polaroids as before. But this time he repeatedly kissed and talked to the severed head while he dismembered the rest of the body, which again, to me, when you read that and the difference to the early killings, it does seem like he's unraveling. So like the need to kill is getting greater. So he's doing it more and more, but also things like the talking to the head and kissing it and stuff, that kind of speaks to his state of mind, do you think?
Yeah. The way it's like everything we know about him is pretty much the way he did the killings and what he did, etc., is what he's told, you know.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But he doesn't. He comes across to me as like a coward. He doesn't like the confrontation. His killings have got to be while they're sedated. You know, he doesn't want the fight or anything at all like that. So I don't even know whether I believe some of these things.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because obviously evidence collection wasn't what it is today then. So a
No,
lot, like
they
you
didn't
say, a
have the
lot of it's,
forensics of what we do
no,
nowadays.
and a lot of it's coming, obviously, like you say, from interviews for him
Is he
from
doing it, or has he said a lot of it to make him be more scary than he actually was?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, and like you say,
Because it's one of them. He knew he was going to die in prison. End of story.
yeah, oh, absolutely. And
So, in his head, did he think, right, I'm leaving a legacy and I'm saying this, 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 this? Maybe we was just, I know he kept some of the parts of the bodies and ate some, but, you know, the kissing the head and talking to it, was he really that sick and deranged, or does he just made us all believe that to be worse?
I can kind of believe it just simply because he seems to have only been able to get his real sexual kicks when they were completely unconscious. So I can sort of understand how that would progress to that. But like you
Totally
say,
see what you're
when
saying.
he
I'm just,
by the time he was arrested, he was one of the most notorious serial killers ever. He knew he was famous. So how do you make sure that you're remembered as one of the most brutal serial killers ever? Is you when you tell your story, you embellish bits of it to make you seem even more messed up and whatnot. It's like, like some serial killers, when they get interviewed, they're concerned about how they look or how they react or how they're portrayed,
yeah,
because they want to be portrayed as like the smooth talking, good looking, bit like Ted Bundy type thing.
yeah,
Whereas he seems to thrive on people thinking he was fucked up and weird, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I guess there's two ways to
I think he
enhance your
realised
story
he couldn't
in
get
fame.
away with the charm of Ted Bundy and he had to leave his legacy as such. But I'd rather believe he was just a fucking coward.
Yeah,
And none
definitely,
of that's true.
definitely. So yeah, he boiled the flesh and the organs, left into like a jelly substance using Soilex, which again that enables him to rinse off the flesh off the skeleton, which he had intended to retain. To preserve the skeleton, he had placed the bones in a light bleach solution for 24 hours before allowing them to dry upon a cloth for 1 week. The severed head was initially placed in the refrigerator before being stripped of the flesh, and then painted and coated with enamel. Um, you know, he's keeping a severed head in his fridge next to his groceries. It's just it's the way their mind works. It's just so different to like you and me and any normal person. Like
Oh, yeah.
people don't want to have meat and dairy on the same shelf in the fridge, and this guy's got a severed head. Like, It's fucking nuts.
As long
So
as you
3
don't keep
weeks
it on the same shelf as the dairy, though, I'm okay with that.
Well, yeah, that's it. No, that's all right then. Jeez,
It's
the
messed up.
it's just crazy, mate. 3 weeks after the murder of Miller, Dahmer encountered another man, a 22-year-old named David Thomas, at a mall, and he persuaded him to come to his apartment for a few drinks, with some additional money on offer if he'd pose for some photographs. Which, to me, I think there's two aspects to the repeatedly being able to get people to come to his apartment for photographs and stuff. And I think the one aspect is he obviously had some level of charisma and charm about him that people trusted him enough. Because, if like a creepy old guy, creepy man or creepy woman, if they're creepy by nature, you're not going to go with them.
Yeah.
So he obviously had some level of charisma to get people to go with him. But also, I think without the internet and things like that, people were less suspicious of people and going with them and what might happen. This was before internet dating and things now where people are wary of everyone they meet. So
And the other thing, back then, homosexuality wasn't as big as it is now, should we say?
Yeah, it wasn't as open, was it?
So when people were getting offered it, they were taking the chances more, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, of course. It's so yeah, with the offer of money for photographs. In his statement to police after his arrest, Dahmer stated that after giving Thomas a drink with sedatives in, he didn't feel attracted to him, but he was afraid to allow him to wake up because he'd be angry over having been drugged. So therefore, he strangled him and dismembered the body, intentionally retaining no body parts whatsoever. And nonetheless, he did take the photographs and go through his ritual from that side of it, which again speaks a lot to the fact that he had a really big need to kill, but the other parts were very much rooted in his sexual fantasies. Because when he wasn't attracted to the victim, he just strangled him, dismembered him, and got rid of him. He did take the photographs, but he didn't do the sort of sexual stuff. And I think that does speak to the fact he can't overcome the need to kill, but the sexual fantasy side of it, he had to be attracted to them. And don't get me wrong, it's still brutal and abhorrent and horrible way for the guy to be killed and stuff. And it's just weird how his method of killing changes depending on how he's feeling that day. So like the guy before, he didn't have the sedatives, but he still needed to kill him, so he cut his throat. This guy, he drugged him, but he wasn't attracted to him after he drugged him, but he still needed to kill him, so he strangled him and just dumped him. Whereas quite often with serial killers, you see the same methodology, the same victimology, the same the same tools, the same rituals. He is a bit all over the map on the ritual side of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to really explain him, is there, other than just totally, utterly fucked up.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's but it's weird, isn't it? Because like he couldn't gauge whether he was attracted to it. He was unconscious, which to me and you is like mind-boggling.
Because, yeah, it was just he just needed them.
Find someone attractive, you find them attractive, but because his like that and the unconscious side of him having the sexual release with it has got so strong at this point that he can't tell until they're in that unconscious prone state whether they're going to be suitable for that side of it.
Yeah.
At the very start, he was just picking people who he's attracted to and then doing it, but he can't do that at this point.
He needs them to be totally unresponsive before he can get to that stage.
Yeah, strange, isn't it?
Which is... that doesn't even seem like a power thing.
No.
You can't explain it.
Oh, yeah. So, like, following the murder of Thomas, he didn't kill anyone for almost 5 months. Although he said in an interview that on a minimum of 5 occasions between the October and February of 1990 to February 91, he had unsuccessfully attempted to lure men to his apartment. He'd also known to have regularly complained of feelings of anxiety and depression to his probation officer throughout 1990. With frequent references to his sexuality, his solitary lifestyle, his financial difficulties, and on several occasions he's known to have referred or to have harboring suicidal thoughts. So, like, obviously, with that information and going back to what I said about him unraveling, it almost sounds there like where he was unraveling and struggling with the urge to kill, he maybe was finding it a bit more difficult to keep up that charming facade, which is why he, at least 5 times he was unsuccessful in getting the people to kill them. So I wonder whether that he was finding it difficult to put on that mask, if you like, and
Yeah,
charm
I think he was.
with him.
It was as if he didn't have no rush or buzz from like tricking him into his place and things. It was purely for the kill. He didn't care about anything else.
Yeah, it wasn't like he enjoyed the chase, if you like, of like trying to charm them into his house. It was just something they had to do to get them to where he wanted. So it doesn't seem like he took much enjoyment from that side of it.
No.
Yeah. So then up to February 91, he observed a 17-year-old man named Curtis Straughter was standing at a bus stop. According to Dahmer, he lured Straughter to his apartment with an offer for money, posing for nude photos with the added incentive of sexual intercourse. Dahmer then drugged and strangled him with a leather strap and then dismembered him, with Dahmer retaining the youth's skull, hands, and genitals while photographing each stage of the dismemberment process. Less than 2 months later, Dahmer encountered another 19-year-old called Errol Lindsay walking to get his key cut. Lindsay was a heterosexual who Dahmer had lured him to his apartment, where he drugged him and drilled a hole into his skull and poured hydraulic acid into it whilst he was alive. Whilst he was fucking alive.
It's fucking.
But again, before you get to that bit, mate, that guy was a heterosexual. So all the others who were either bisexual or homosexual who'd gone with him, he was able to charm a heterosexual man who he didn't know, he'd just met, a teenager, in fact, to go with him. And he drugged him. But fucking hell. Like, drilled a hole in his skull, poured hydraulic acid into it while he was alive. Lindsay awoke after the experiment, which Dahmer had conceived in the hope of inducing a permanent, unresistant, submissive state. So basically, he wanted him in that prone, like that unconscious state where he couldn't defend, he's just completely at his mercy, like he wanted with all his victims, to do the sexual fantasies and stuff he had. But he wanted him to be in that state, but conscious, if that makes sense. So it seems like he wanted him aware what's going on, but unable to do anything about it. How do you even come up with shit like that, mate? Seriously.
I know, what is it that I just. You can't even think of an explanation of why, how, anything whatsoever. Just nothing.
No, mate, it's
There's
fucked up, I'm telling you.
just nothing.
Yeah.
You can't, you can't. Oh, he did it for this reason. Maybe it was it. There
No.
is no fucking reason whatsoever.
Nope. So Lindsay woke up and he said, I don't want to get it right. He said he woke up saying, "I have a headache. What time is it?" In response to this, Dahmer drugged him again and then strangled him. He decapitated him, retained his skull. He then flayed his body, placing the skin in a solution of cold water and salt for several weeks in the hope of permanently retaining it. Reluctantly, he disposed of Lindsay's skin when it had become too frail and brittle. So, like you say, obviously all his crimes are fucking awful and brutal, but this was on just another level of what he did, because this guy was aware of what was being done to him. All the other people were unconscious.
And like, why now kind of start experimenting? Do you know what I mean? It's not like he's done these things with these people to experiment. The first load of them is just to kill. That's it.
Oh yeah. So following this, on I just went off the screen. Afternoon of May 26, 1991, he encountered a 14-year-old boy. Now, I'm going to really butcher this name because it's quite a long one, so I really apologise if I pronounce it wrong. Konorak Sintha Hasfone. I'm going to call him Konorak just because I can't pronounce his surname. Apologies. So he approached Konorak, a 14-year-old, the youth, with an offer of money to accompany to his apartment to pose for some pictures. According to Dahmer, Konorak, the younger brother of a boy who he had molested in 1988, was initially reluctant with the proposal before changing his mind and going with him. The youth posed for a couple of pictures in his underwear before Dahmer drugged him into unconsciousness and performed oral sex on him. On this occasion, he drilled a single hole into the boy's skull and then injected hydraulic acid into the frontal lobe. Before Konorak fell unconscious, Dahmer led the boy into his bedroom, where the body of 31-year-old Tony Hughes, whom Dahmer had killed 3 days earlier, lay naked on the floor. And according to Dahmer, he believed that Konorak saw the body, yet didn't react to seeing the bloated corpse, likely because of the effects of the sleeping pills and the hydraulic acid that he had injected into his skull. Konorak soon became unconscious, whereby Dahmer then casually drank some beers while laying alongside him before leaving his apartment to drink at a bar, purchase some more alcohol, and in the early hours of May 27th, he returned to his apartment to discover that Konorak sitting naked on the corner. He returned towards his apartment to discover Konorak sitting naked on the corner of 25th and State. So basically, like, he came back and Konorak had come around. He found him on the street corner naked and confused. Dahmer approached. So then 3 distressed young women were standing near him, the boy. So Dahmer approached the trio, explained to the woman that Konorak, whom he referred to by an alias, was his friend, and attempted to lead him to his apartment by the arm. 3 women dissuaded Dahmer, explaining they had phoned 911. So 2 officers arrived. Dahmer, he remained relaxed at all times. He informed the officers that Konorak was his 19-year-old boyfriend and that he had drunk too much following an argument, and they frequently behaved in this manner when intoxicated. The 3 women were exasperated, and when one of the trio attempted to indicate to the officers that Konorak was bleeding from his buttocks and that he had seemingly struggled against Dahmer's attempts to walk him away, the officer harshly told the woman to butt out and shut the hell up and not to interfere, adding that the incident was a domestic. The police didn't get involved. Now, that is, imagine you're that officer, those 2 officers.
That's what it used to be like, didn't it, with them, though? Domestics, even in this country, they just didn't want to know.
Oh, I know, mate, but like his 14-year-old boy, imagine how those 2 guys feel now. Like knowing that.
The thing is, he must have known. He must have known the kid was younger than 19. You know.
It's hard, mate. Like
but then I don't know because I haven't seen a picture of him, to be honest. So
no, my kid's
I can't
14,
comment on
mate.
That. But
nearly 6
if they
foot.
said, there's blood coming from his anus, you think they'd check at least.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like, you'd think the woman would not just notice it, she'd say, look, he's got blood coming from his ass, but
Yeah, you think that, like, you could understand if it was just, oh, look, he was, trying to get
Then,
away from Dahmer. They'd think, yeah, it's a liver's tiff, whatever. But, blood coming from your ass, maybe we should check that.
unless the woman like said afterwards in like books and stuff, or yeah, I noticed it, but the police ignored it. Do you know what I mean? It got a bit embellished after it all came out or something. I don't know.
I don't know, you think if a woman would have noticed that at the time, they'd have said it to the officers straight
Yeah,
away.
but that's what I mean. Maybe she didn't notice it, and she sort of embellished the story at a later date to when the people were writing books on him and stuff. I don't know. I just given
I
another
haven't found
side. But
anywhere of the police officers saying different to, like,
no,
argue
no, of
against that
course.
statement, though. So when you think they would,
Yeah, because I'm
because
sure they
obviously
feel
that's
guilty and terrible about it.
that's fucking shocking, isn't it?
Oh yeah. So against the protests of the three women, the officers simply covered uh, Conorak up with a towel and walked him to Dahmer's apartment. Fucking hell. They walked him to the apartment. In an effort to verify his claim that he and Conorak were lovers, Dahmer showed the officers the two semi-nude Polaroid pictures he had taken of the young man earlier that evening. The officers later reported noting that there was a strange scent reminiscent of excrement inside the apartment. This odour was from the decomposing body of the victim from the week before. Dahmer stated that to investigate this, one officer simply peeked his head around the bedroom but didn't really take a good look. The officers left with a departing remark that Dahmer should take better care of Conorak. Had they conducted a background check on Dahmer, it would have revealed that he was a convicted child molester who was on probation. And upon the departure of the two police officers from his apartment, Dahmer again injected hydraulic acid into the Conorak's brain, and on this second occasion, the injection was fatal. The following day, May 28th, not Mr. Dahmer at all, Dahmer took a day's leave from work to devote himself to dismembering the bodies of Conorak and Hughes. He retained both victims' skulls. On June the 30th, Dahmer travelled to Chicago, where he encountered a 20-year-old man named Matt Turner at the bus station. Turner accepted Dahmer's offer to travel to Milwaukee for a professional photo shoot. Dahmer then drugged, strangled, and dismembered Turner and placed his head and internal organs in separate freezer bags. Turner was not reported missing for 5 days, Turner was not reported missing. 5 days later, on July the 5th, Dahmer lured 23-year-old Jeremiah Weinberger from a Chicago bar to his apartment on the promise of spending the weekend with him. He later drugged him twice before injecting boiling water through his skull, sending him into a coma where he died 2 days later. So again, he's altering the victimology, he's altering the way he's doing things.
Totally, like, off subject here, well, on subject, but how fucking nuts is it that water kills someone but the acid didn't?
Acid, yeah, it's messed up.
I don't get that at all. Like, surely a drop of hydrochloric acid would just fucking ruin your brain, kill you instant.
Yeah, and like his victimology is all over the place. It's like he went from a 14-year-old boy to a 30-year-old, and it's up and down and all over the place. There's not just one age he's interested in.
It sounds as if he's probably asked 10 or 15 people before this one person that night, though.
Yeah.
Because nowhere in this does he seem like he's a charmer. No one ever come out and said, like, Bundy. There was hundreds, thousands of people who said, oh, he was such a charmer and he was this and he was that. No one's ever come out and said anything like this about Dahmer. So it's most probably he's gone up and asked 20 different people the same question first, and then this one has happened to say yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I think he's just that creepy, horrible little weirdo that, you see all over the place. It's just he obviously pushed his limits way beyond anyone ever should.
Absolutely. Fucking hell. So then on July 15th, and this is the thing now, he's on a full-blown spree, isn't he? It's like there's barely like weeks in between rather than months. You're talking like weeks in between, if that. So on July 15th, he encountered a 24-year-old Oliver Lacey. Lacey agreed to his usual ruse of posing nude photographs, accompanied him to his apartment. The pair engaged in tentative sexual activity before Dahmer drugged Lacey. And this time, Dahmer intended to prolong the time he spent with Lacey while alive. So after unsuccessfully attempting to render him unconscious with chloroform, he phoned his workplace to request a day's absence again. This was granted, although the next day he was suspended from work. He then strangled Lacey. Dahmer had sex with his corpse before dismembering him, and he placed Lacey's head and heart in the refrigerator, and his skeleton in the freezer. 4 days later, he received word that he had been fired. Upon receiving this news, he lured another 25-year-old Joseph Braidhoft to his apartment. Braidhoft was strangled, left lying on Dahmer's bed, covered with a sheet for 2 days. On July 21st, Dahmer removed these sheets to find the head covered in maggots, whereupon he decapitated the body, cleaned the head, placed it in the refrigerator again. And then he later acidified Braidhoft's torso along with his 2 other victims. Just. But he's like, obviously, it's easy to say with hindsight, but he's on his last he's on a spree now before he gets caught. So his arrest, July 22nd, 1991, Dahmer's approached by 3 men with an offer. He approached 3 men with an offer of $100 to accompany him to his apartment to pose for nude photographs, drink beer, and just keep him company. One of the trio, Tracy Edwards, agreed to accompany him to his apartment. Upon entering Dahmer's apartment, Edward noted a foul odor, several boxes of hydraulic acid on the floor. Jesus Christ, several boxes of hydraulic acid, mate.
Where'd you even get all that?
Especially in 1990. It's not like you could hop on Google and order it, is it?
It's nuts.
But yeah, he was
How
fully
did they know
prepared.
to pick up on it? But then, I suppose back then, because it wasn't like, I don't think it was a banned substance back then, and everyone was using it to like strip metal, all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? So Dahmer claimed it was the acid was for cleaning bricks. After some minor conversation, Edwards responded to his request to turn his head and view his tropical fish, whereupon Dahmer placed a handcuff around his wrist. When Edwards asked what's happening, Dahmer unsuccessfully attempted to cuff both his wrists together. He then told Edwards to accompany him to his bedroom to pose for the nude photos. While inside the bedroom, Edwards noted nude male posters on the wall and a video of The Exorcist 3 playing. He also noted a 57-gallon drum in the corner from which a very strong odor was emanating. Dahmer then brandished a knife, informed Edwards he was intending to take the nude pictures of him. In attempt to appease Dahmer, Edwards played along, unbuttoned his shirt, and he kind of tried to, I would assume, as you would try and do in these, you always hear of like people who've been kidnapped, they'll play along with whatever their kidnapper wants them to do because you just want to stay alive. It's like the animal instincts, isn't it? Just to do whatever you can to just stay alive long enough that someone will come and save you. And he kept telling Dahmer that he was his friend, that he wouldn't run away. After Dahmer informed him he was going to eat his heart, and he would saying things like, I'm your friend, I'm not going to run away, please don't hurt me, this type of stuff. But Edwards had decided he was going to either jump from the window or run through an unlocked front door as soon as he had the next opportunity. And when Edwards needed to use the bathroom, he asked if he could sit with a beer in the living room where there was an air conditioning unit, and Dahmer agreed. So to a certain extent, Dahmer sort of fell for that ruse, if you like, of him doing, trying to stay alive, basically. Inside the living room, Edwards waited until he observed Dahmer, and then as soon as he had a momentary sort of lapse of concentration, took his eye off him. Edwards rose from the couch. He noted Dahmer was not holding the handcuffs, so Edwards punched him in the face, knocking Dahmer off balance, and ran out the front door. 11:30 p.m. on July 22nd, Edwards managed to flag down 2 police officers at the corner of the street, and the officers noted that he was handcuffed to one wrist. Edwards explained to the officers that some freak had placed the handcuffs on him. When the officers arrived at Dahmer's apartment, he invited the 3 of them inside, and he admitted to placing the handcuffs on Edwards, although he offered no explanation as to why he had done it. Edwards told the police that Dahmer had also brandished a knife. Dahmer made no comment to this revelation. Rolf Mueller was told by one of the officers that the key to the handcuff was in his bedside dresser. As Mueller entered the bedroom, Dahmer attempted to pass Mueller to himself, retrieve the key. The second officer, Robert Wraith, informed him to sort of back off, don't move type thing, because they obviously thought he was going to get the knife. And as it was, there was a knife beneath the bed, which was next to the drawers. So that's why he was trying to make a run for it. They found the open drawer, which had Polaroids of his many, many kills. All the dismemberment. You imagine finding that drawer, mate, of all those pictures of bodies and sex with corpses and fuck knows what, mate.
No,
and how many there was as well,
that.
mate. No.
That'd scare me for life.
Fucking right, mate. It's completely off subject, but talking about being scarred for life. I used to play football with a guy, and his name was Brian. He worked for the rail service, and his job was to, when people threw themselves in front of a train, to go and retrieve the body parts. And on his first night, he had to go and retrieve. Someone got hit by a train, and he had to go and retrieve a head. So forever, obviously, when you've got a job like that, you have to have black humor to get by, because your mind won't be able to cope with it.
Oh, you have to.
So his nickname was Eddie. He still is, as far as I know, because on his first night he found a head, and I mean, I got full respect for people who do jobs like that, because I don't think my brain would be able to, I think my brain would go. I think my just wouldn't be able to cope. Sorry, I went off random tangent.
You say that though, you desensitise to anything, mate. If you do it enough, it's harsh and cruel to say, but it's human nature. If you do something enough, you desensitise to it.
Yeah, and I think that's why you got these people who watch all these websites of like killings and like executions and stuff, because they just, once they've watched them a few different ones, they just, it's all the same. Not all the same, but
you say that, yeah, totally. But then if they ever watched a live one, they'd probably feel sick. It's that whole different ball game, isn't it? But you imagine having to go and pick up, like you say, severed heads and things.
Yes.
You'd have to have black humour, mate. Otherwise, you eat yourself up.
Oh yeah. So he was, so he's arrested. That was how he was arrested. He died in 1994. Dahmer left his cell to conduct his assigned work detail. Accompanying him were two fellow inmates, Jesse Anderson and Chris Scarver. They were left unsupervised in the showers of the gym for approximately 20 minutes. At 8:10 in the morning, Dahmer was discovered on the floor at the bathroom with extreme head and facial wounds. He had been severely bludgeoned around the head and face with a metal bar. He had been also repeatedly struck against the wall in the hospital. He was still alive and was rushed to a nearby hospital, but he was pronounced dead an hour later. Sorry, I got no sympathy whatsoever.
I just wish he'd suffered a bit more, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And that is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Scarver deserves more praise than Dahmer.
Yeah, fucking right. Yeah, so that's it. That's Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, in many ways, this has been the hardest podcast I've had to do out of all 30, nearly 40 now. And I wanted to read up on Dahmer to do his victims justice and make sure my info was factually correct. And I've got an interest in true crime and serial killers, hence adding this series to the other series we do and the shows. But I won't lie, it was heavy reading and watching documentaries and listening to the horrific stuff you'd done to so many people was difficult, but it's interesting. I've always found it interesting, but I think it's very difficult to speak about it.
Everyone out there, please don't think any way, shape, or form we're glorifying any of the actions of any of these people. We're both fathers, and we speak off air, obviously, and even just speaking about this subject and having to look into it and read about it, it makes us feel ill. We've got kids, and we know there's people in this world. There's other Dahmers about. That's the bottom line. That's the harsh fucking truth.
And it's big time, mate. And
it's one of those things.
Like as we do these, definitely, mate. We want to understand it. We want to talk about it. It is interesting, but also we want to, as we go through these different serial killers and podcasts, we'll get better in terms of how we lay out the show, and we'll try new things. Obviously, with this one, we've gone through every single murder one at a time. I'm not sure if we're going to continually do that, or if we're going to shorten them down, or if we're going to keep doing them in two parts. We might do that so that we can do them justice. So yeah, just guys, let us know whether you'd rather we condense it down into like a one sort of 75 minute show, or whether you would rather do like 2 1-hour shows, whatever works best for you guys. But we'll be back with another serial killer very soon. Our next show is on Harold Shipman, which is one which I remember growing up and being very, very aware of. So yeah, he was one of the most notorious UK serial killers ever. He was a doctor.
He's one of the most notorious serial killers in the world ever.
Oh, absolutely, mate.
But also one of the most unknown.
Yeah, funny enough, I interviewed an American actress yesterday or Friday, and she hadn't heard of Harold Shipman. So I mean, goes to show how many serial killers there are around the world, because not everyone is aware of all of them. Okay, guys, so you can find Rhys on Twitter at ShawCeltic. You can find the show on at ACEcast_nation. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help us keep producing content and podcasts, get our growing lists of shows and series, and help us keep getting guests. Check us out on Facebook, and all the shows are available on audio download, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, podcast.co, all those good sites. You can join us next time for another episode of the Serial Killer Files. Look out for our weekly show on conspiracy theories, as well as all our other shows and series that we do. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Rhys, for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.